This last summer, my family and we got a chance to go down to New Braunfels area for some vacation. We went and spent a few days in some cabins with some other family friends. And despite my calendar saying that I was on vacation, my brain wasn't really buying in. So that first day, I woke up with a start. I was like, oh, I got to get going. I felt the energy. I just need to get going, get started, got to get to work. So I went out, I got up, I brewed some coffee, and I stepped outside. They had some Adirondack chairs that were outside these little cabins, so I plopped down in one of those, and just so I could be. And about 5 minutes into being, I was so anxious that I had to get up and do something, because I was just like, I can't do this. I had brought a book with me on the trip in case I had time to, try to read, and man, I wasn't even an hour into the first day of vacation. I already needed to crack open the book. Well, the book it was about 5 years old, but I kept hearing about it, and I kept hearing, and even in tangential conversations, hearing about this book. And so I thought, I'll get it. So I bought it to see if it had teeth. And y'all, I didn't even get into the second page of the foreword before I already felt like this was going to be something extraordinary. I was already starting to squirm in my seats. I started to continue to read, and I felt seen. And not like in the good way. I'm talking like standing up in front of a bunch of people naked kind of scene, right? Like really uncomfortable. The author continued to lay out what he believed to be the greatest threat to our spiritual life. The greatest threat to our spiritual life. And I began to weep. First full day of vacation, and I'm out there weeping because I felt broken and I felt exposed. Sometimes, tears, they come when there's things that we cannot change, like for the people that we have lost that we can't get back, for the things that you have done that you can't undo. And sometimes tears come when there is this sort of epiphany, this moment where all of a sudden you see it differently than you saw before, when the skeletons fall out of the closet, but they're immediately embraced with grace and mercy and hope. Friends, I am sick, but I am getting better. And I need you to know that you are sick, but the good news is that there is healing. Last week, we talked about the design of a wheel. We looked at a cart wheel or a wagon wheel as the most obvious example of it. We talked about all these different spokes that are coming out. We talked about how those spokes are kind of like the things that we do in life, the ways that we hold our lives busy, all the things that are important to us, the goals that we have. All these spokes come out. But we also talked about how spokes of a wheel have zero power, zero ability to be able to work if they are not connected to the core. If they don't reconnect to that hub, then they have no power to be able to move you forward. And just like spokes of a wheel have no power if they're not connected, our efforts, our desires are going to ultimately fail if we are not connected to our hub. Now, I know this can sound churchy, but I really need you to hear it. That hub is your spiritual life. That hub is your spiritual holiness moment. And I'm not talking about the tasks like going to church or reading the Bible or trying to pray. Like those are tasks, but they all anchor into this more important element of a relationship with God. This is our hub. And we talked about the importance of doing some hub work, really getting reconnected. So when John Ortberg asked his mentor, Dallas Willard, what he needed to do to stay spiritually healthy and alive, after a really long pause, Willard answered and said, "You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life." Ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And John's like, okay, and what else? And he's like, no, that's it. That. Years later, John Mark Comer, reflecting on that story, started to write a book, and borrowing from Willard's diagnosis, he titled it the same. It was this book that I was reading that reminded me of truth, that gave me a mirror to see my own soul and to see that I was sick. And again, like I said before, I'm not the only one. I know that you are wrestling with this too. I know we're not the only one. I know that we are all suffering from hurry sickness. See if you recognize some of these symptoms that describe it. Like things like restlessness. Even when you slow down, you can't really relax. Maybe this one, irritability. Everything seems to be on your edge. It gets you mad. It gets you frustrated. It gets you annoyed so easily. Hypersensitivity. Man, it doesn't take much to throw you into an emotional funk. Or workaholism. So busy chasing accomplishments and accumulation that you don't know when to stop. How about lack of empathy? Ain't nobody got time for that, for them, for their issues. Comer says, hurry is a form of violence on the soul. A form of violence on the soul. Can you see it? Can you see it in yourself? Can you see it in something that you have affecting you, but not just you? Because it's affecting you, it's affecting everybody else that's around you. Corrie ten Boom once said that if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Truth is that, right? Both sin and busyness have the same effect. They cut off your connection to God, to other people, and even to your own soul. Can you see how if we are going to do some hub work this year, if we're going to reconnect to that which gives power and purpose and guidance, we are going to have to deal with our hurry sickness. Comer teaches that before the sundial was created and began to hack up brutally the little moments of our life, before the watch, before the clock ever existed, we operated on what he called natural time. The sun came up, we got up. Sun went down, we went to bed. Then the clock came out and gave us a way to be able to be more organized and more efficient with our use of the day. And we have been. But historian Daniel Boorstin said, this was man's declaration of independence from the sun, new proof of his mastery over himself and his surroundings. Only later would it be revealed that he had accomplished this mastery by putting himself under the dominion of a machine with imperious demands all its own. We think we have the power to be in charge all the time, that we know what is best. But we find ourselves leaping into unknown territory, and often we don't know how to get ourselves back. I don't know if you've noticed, but our world is really hurting lately. Our nation is full of so much vitriol and hatred. We walk on eggshells with people that we've always disagreed with, but that we used to be able to sit down and still have coffee with. Anger is so easy. Hate and complaining is so easy these days. How do we get back to living lives of peace? Well, if we're willing to live differently, Jesus offers us a really viable option. And again, don't hear churchy language. I'm serious about this. If you're willing to live differently, Jesus has a really viable option. You know, Jesus in his time, they were not super easy days. First century Judea was not simple. There was all sorts of political turmoil. There was all sorts of cultural change. There was all sorts of pain, and it wasn't easier back then. Yet Jesus taught and lived a very distinct life. Not of hatred, but of love. Not of lies, but of truth. Not of violence, but peace. Throughout the Gospels, we see him extending invitations. He never demanded. He never shamed you. He never used scare tactics or attempted to be the most important, the most liked. He simply would invite you to come and see, come and be a part of what I'm doing. Listen, it's important to understand that salvation of our souls is not accomplished by racking up more points in the good person column than the bad person column. It is not accomplished and achieved by being a good person. Salvation of our soul is purely on faith. That's it. Faith that Jesus is that healing balm, is that one that can bring us back into relationship with God, is the one who can heal our souls. Jesus is also the answer when it comes to healing our world, about saving the day, the moments, the everyday, the stuff that's going on. But here's the thing. If you want to experience the life of Jesus, you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. And Comer does a really good job of helping us to offer some clarity here. So the word life, when we think of life, it's your experience of the human condition. Lifestyle is the collection of rhythms and routines that make up your day-to-day existence. It's the way that you organize your time and your money, right? You see the difference. Now, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be exploring practical ways to do hub work, to eliminate hurry's compounding effects on our souls by seeking to adopt a lifestyle of Jesus. And I highly recommend this book. We have several actually small groups that are going to be taking this on. Sunday mornings, the Journey class is going to be using this book. And then on Wednesdays, Pastor Kelly is going to be there to be able to kind of walk through. This is the kind of thing you can come and wrestle with each other. You can kind of say, this is hard. And someone else will say, absolutely. On Thursday nights for men in their 40s and 50s, there's a group of men that get together. We're going to be looking at this book as well. But you know what? You could get this book and you could still do it on your own time, even if your schedule doesn't permit. I want you to know that out on our website, if you go to prosperumc.org/Bible study, it'll lead you to a page where you can see about these groups. But also there's something that we're calling a companion guide that Pastor Kelly's been pulling together. And you can download this, you can print it, or you can see the digital version of it. But this is a way to be able to walk through this book and to be able to feel like you are actually practicing it. This is important. We're not just reading a book. We are taking on the lifestyle of Jesus. There are 4 different practices that Comer likes to talk about from the example of Jesus, from the lifestyle of Jesus, and that can help us to unhurry our lives. The first one is today, we're going to talk about silence and solitude. So before we press forward, will you pray with me? God, this whole build-up, it's really easy to feel anxious. It's really easy to feel like we are sick. We can feel guilty. We can feel shameful. But God, I pray that you just help us to see that we are here and that you are offering us something. And so, Lord, I pray that you help me to get out of the way. Help me to decrease as you increase. It is you that we seek today. It is the healing. It is the hope. And so I pray that you help us to hear it. Speak boldly to us. Your servants are listening. Amen. I grew up in Richardson, Texas, for those of you who don't know, and those that are not natives in this area, that's just outside of Dallas. It was one of those towns that was kind of beginning to develop. It wasn't finished, but it had a lot of stuff going on. And I happened to be fortunate enough to grow up in an area where everything that was just in a walking distance was full of entertainment. So even before I was driving, I was able to meet up with friends and go to some pretty neat things. One of those, and I would go to it as often as I could with my allowance, as long as it lasted, was a place called Twin Creeks Putt-Putt Golf. I loved going to this place. We would go and we'd walk up, you'd walk past all the arcades when you walk into the building, and you walk up to the counter and you grab your putter, and I mean, it's not Tiger Woods worthy, but neither was my putting, so it was okay, right? And so you get your putt and then you go and you play. I got a chance to be able to meet up with friends there for the first time, and I felt so big and important. It was so cool. And so I walked in, I got my putter, made sure I didn't get the baby one. Didn't want that. I didn't want the guys making fun of me. And I got my putter, and I walked over to the first hole, and I was ready. Now, all my friends, they stepped up, and they went first. And then it got to my turn, and I looked at them, and I was like, where's my golf ball? And they looked at me and they said, you came to Putt-Putt Golf and you don't have your golf ball? You didn't stop and get it? And they started laughing and making fun of me. Y'all, every time I had been there, I was with my parents. I didn't know that there was a whole other place you were supposed to stop to be able to get your golf ball and pay. And then you go and you play. That whole day, man, emotionally, I'm hijacked. I had to put up with a lot of making fun. We were in middle school. You don't have to go far to know that that was a hard day, right? On my own, I know there are days when it's like that for us too. You and I, when it comes to living the lifestyle of Jesus, we need to pay attention and notice that there are some really important stops along the way that Jesus modeled for us. After Jesus was baptized, he began his work of ministry. He was told that he was beloved by God and that God was well pleased with him. And then immediately he found himself in the desert, the wilderness, in a deserted place, a solitary place, a quiet place. And that's really easy for us to see that and think, man, that's like punishment. Like, why was he suddenly in the wilderness? But Comer points out that it's actually a positioning of power. He was being prepared for all the things that were about to come. The reason he was in this quiet place was because he needed to get ready. When he got quiet with God, he could hear. And it's amazing, you and I, when we find ourselves getting quiet, how in tune we can find ourselves with God. When we quiet ourselves with God, it's amazing how in tune we can be and we can hear and understand what's going on in our hearts, in our minds. In fact, the Gospels would share story and story after again and again about how Jesus would go away to pray. We keep seeing it over and over again. Even the busier that Jesus got, the more he actually withdrew to quiet places. I mean, meanwhile, for us, like if things are getting hectic and things are getting busy, it's the complete opposite, right? Comer would put it this way. He said, when we get over busy and life is hectic and people are vying for our time, the quiet place is the first thing to go rather than our first go-to. Not for Jesus, though. At the height of the tension, at the height of the demands on him, the needs, he would slip away for a time to pray. At the end of the Gospel of Matthew, we find a really powerful story about this. Jesus knows that he will soon be arrested. He knows that he will be tried. He knows that he is going to be hung on a cross. He knows that all of this is coming. And so what does he do? He goes and he rallies an army. No. What does he do? Oh, he tries to get his retorts ready for trial. No. He pulls away and spends time quiet with God. And let's just be honest for a minute. I mean, nothing feels practical about that. I'm being human here, right? Like nothing feels practical about that. I'd be like, how is that going to get me out from this? How is this going to keep me away from harm? How is this going to keep me from being sent to this next thing? How does that help? Hang tight. Jesus gets away by himself, and he gets quiet with God. And in Matthew 26, starting at verse 36, we hear these words. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and two of the sons of Zebedee, and he began to be grieved and agitated. And then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he came to the disciples and he found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, So you could not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away. And he comes back and they're asleep again. And he encourages them, pray. And he goes away and he comes back and they're still asleep. And then he says, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. My betrayer is at hand. The word of God for the people of God. You know what happened next? What happened next? When they came for Jesus, when they were hateful toward him, he loved them. He even prayed that God would forgive them. When people were violent toward him, he gave them nothing but peace. When he would go into trial and people would say lies about him, he would do nothing but speak truth. Even when a lie could have gotten him out from behind this, he could have gotten away from the cross, he just spoke truth. But remember Peter? Peter, who Jesus was encouraging to get away and pray to spend time with God. Remember Peter, who instead fell asleep? Peter, when the guards came, he drew his sword to commit violence. Peter, when he went into the courtyard and he was asked a question, he could have told the truth, but he lied about even knowing Jesus 3 different times. Jesus knew that he needed that time to prepare him. He needed to quiet the external noise everything that was happening around him, and he needed to quiet the internal noise of his soul to allow God's voice of love to be able to be over those internal struggles and insecurities. And you know what? If Jesus needed that time, what makes us think that we don't? If Jesus needed that time, why do we think that we don't? If we're going to play the game, we got to stop first and get on the ball. If we're going to live this life that Jesus offers, we have got to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. And he's showing us again and again what we have to do. We have to get quiet and allow God to prepare us. Look, the world doesn't need more Christians who are trying to live at the top, more Christians who are trying to judge everyone like everyone else in the world, trying to act their own self-interest and call it Christianity. What we need are more people who are not trying to tear apart, but that are trying to be formed by the way of Jesus. We need more people being formed by the way of Jesus. Y'all, it's easy to hate right now. It takes time to love someone. It takes time to get to know them, to listen, to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree. It takes time to will what is good for another person. We have to take time for silence and solitude with God, that we can move at the pace of love. This week, when moments of silence find their way into your life, don't rush to fill them with your phone. Don't pick it up. Don't try to turn on the TV. When silence begins to find its way into your life, embrace it. Give it a chance. Squirm through the moments of the internal language as it tries to fight us, and then get through that and feel embraced by God. Allow God's mercy to prepare you for what is to come and fill your heart with his peace. May it be so in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.